Matt, it was a busy night for Burlington police last night. Chief John Murad tells us the situation regarding the two deaths in the Old North End last night actually started over on Main Street with calls regarding gunfire. Now, police didn't find any suspects there at that time and decided to call it a night. But just over an hour later, police showed up to what Murad is calling a double murder on Decatur Street that police say is connected. Now, we don't know much about what went down inside the apartment prior to the shooting. Again, police say a third person could have been involved, but Murad is not releasing any information about a possible suspect at this time. But Murad did say there is no threat to the public right now. Thanks, Lauren. It's a new era at the airport tonight as it's officially renamed the Patrick Leahy Burlington International Airport. Vermont leaders stood by as the building was dedicated to the former senator himself, but not without a flashy and themed big reveal first. And after all those renovations both Leahy and Longo mentioned, the airport is now up to serving over 1.4 million passengers every year. Road conditions in southern Vermont are already bad and expected to get worse throughout the day. Multiple different sections of Vermont Route 103 are closed down due to flooding, and we already know of at least two towns, Ludlow and Weston, that are completely underwater. The police operation here at the Lower Weldon Apartments lasted for about an hour and a half, packing up at 1:30. It's about 2 o'clock now, and that warrant is being executed in the apartment right behind me. But despite that large police presence, Franklin County Sheriff John Grismore assured there was never any danger to the public or the community that lives here. A jury returned a guilty verdict in the murder trial for Caitlin Armstrong around 4 p.m. But court timestamps show that decision was reached at 2:14, just about 2 hours after closing arguments concluded.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Caitlin Armstrong, guilty of the offense of murder as alleged in the indictment.
Attorneys on both sides started and ended closing arguments earlier today. The judge in this case only allowed cameras in the room for openings and closings and for the guilty verdict. Taking you back, Mo Wilson was found shot in an East Austin residence in May of 2022. Police issued an arrest warrant for Armstrong 6 days later. Authorities say Armstrong fled to Costa Rica, where she was arrested 43 days after the crime. In closing arguments this morning, the prosecution brought back evidence of Armstrong being present at the murder scene, while the defense continued its argument that Armstrong was caught in a string of circumstantial evidence. Thanks, Lauren. It was a somber scene here outside the Rutland Recreation Center where community members and law enforcement officers from across the state came out to honor the memory of fallen officer Jessica Ebbeckhausen. And I can't express enough just how many officers and first responders were out here earlier today to pay their respects. We learned that Officer Ebbeckhausen wanted to become a police officer when she was just 9 years old and dedicated much of her teenage life to serving her community and the Rutland Police Department. She was just a few months shy of continuing training at the police academy, but ever since her death, the entire state of Vermont has come together to honor her memory. A memorial outside the police department gained hundreds of gifts and flowers in her memory, and a GoFundMe for Ebbeckhausen's funeral expenses has reached over $50,000. Many law enforcement officers didn't want to speak on camera, but told me about the mass amounts of support they felt today. I did speak to the Rutland City Mayor on how this tragedy impacted the community. Mayor Mike Dungus emphasized the phrase Rutland Strong and said the community coming together like this was like an embrace for the Rutland City Police Department. I'll have more from this viewing tonight at 11, and we'll also have coverage from Officer Ebbeckhausen's funeral service tomorrow. For now, live in Rutland, Isabel Schonemann, ABC 22 News. Emergency crews are just now letting us take a closer look at that crashed propane tanker in the Black River in Irisburg. As you can see, the flames behind me are still burning very high, and the fire chief says they're now letting the gas burn off. Long days and nights for fire and emergency crews, keeping an eye on the flames around the clock. A propane tanker crashed into the river around 6:40 Monday morning, engulfing the bridge in flames.
We figure there's about 7,000 gallons of liquid in there right now. It started out at 10,000.
Irisburg Fire Chief Robin Beaton says crews are letting the gas burn in order to empty the tank to make it safe to get the truck out of the water. The worry, once the flames go out, the integrity of the bridge.
The bridge beams we're finding that 3 of them are bent, assorted, so we have a pretty good feeling that the bridge is no good now.
Meanwhile, Haley Shelifo and her family, who live across the street from the crash site, are still displaced, now staying in a hotel. Shelifo tells me her mom was the first to call 911 as she woke up to the noise of the crash.
My bedroom window faces the bridge, and then there was a huge explosion, which honestly is something that you would only really think about hearing in a movie.
She says that morning felt surreal.
I look out my window and I say, oh my God, the bridge is on fire. That's all you could see. Flames were coming underneath the bridge, over top the bridge.
Shelifo says she didn't have time to think about grabbing any belongings. Her family of 6 raced to evacuate, while Shelifo tried to find out if the driver was okay.
I threw on my boots. I actually went out in exactly what I'm wearing right now. I still haven't been able to change. And I just ran out and then I started yelling, hello, is anyone there? Can you hear me? You know, because the driver was our #1 priority, trying to see if they were okay, which at the time we didn't know if he even made it out.
Thankfully, the driver, 44-year-old Casey McQuaid, made it out safely. Now, Shelifo and her family are worried about the condition of their house. She says the power went out and she doesn't know if the pipes will freeze.
We can't go home. We have a guinea pig that's actually at home right now, so we're hoping that he's going to be okay.
Chief Beaton says the risk of further explosions has diminished, and fire crews will stay in the area for the next few days, saying everything should be, quote, back to normal by the end of the week. The fire chief says it could take another 1 to 2 days for the propane to burn off and the flames to go out. Meanwhile, crews are working on getting a temporary bridge installed to allow for 1 lane of traffic. In Irisburg, Isabel Schonemann, ABC 22 News. Flooding off the highways in Waterbury is preventing many people from getting where they need to be in town. We've seen multiple drivers come down this road in front of me, stop, turn around when they see these floodwaters right behind me. We've also been noticing people in canoes, kayaks, even stand-up paddle boards on these waters throughout the day. But some good news, the water levels are going down. Just a few hours ago, you can see this car stuck in the water right behind me. Just a few hours ago, that water level was up to this car's roof. Now it's down to under the taillights, so that's some good news. And as these floodwaters recede, the town center is starting to reopen, allowing people to find refuge in the drier parts of town. The sun made an appearance Tuesday in Waterbury, and people checked out the flood damage. The roundabout at Route 100 and US 2 was partly blocked off, with half the circle underwater.
I was amazed coming down this morning and seeing that at the roundabout it was blocked up because of the flood.
Vermont Emergency Management tells us there was a high-risk rescue that took place right here Monday night. A team from New Hampshire rescued a mom and an infant from their car after it went around barriers and got stuck in the flood. And Maxwell Morado says the water has risen substantially.
Before we could see the lights of the car last night, and now the car's just like almost disappeared. It's pretty crazy, and like it's amazing how much the water has risen in like overnight.
Meanwhile, Brittany Dion says she's thankful she and her family got out of their house when they did.
We're lucky and had my parents who live outside of town to be able to evacuate and go to them. Me and my husband dropped our kids off last night, but we took several trips and we're loading stuff from the basement, moving it to the 2nd story of our house to save as much family heirloom stuff as we possibly could.
Dion was here during Tropical Storm Irene and saw the devastation it left behind.
So now to be in it, it's scary, and I can't imagine, and keep praying that everything will be okay.
While the water levels here in Waterbury are going down, there's still concern of more rain and the status of the Wrightsville Dam. Reporting live in Waterbury, I'm Isabel Schonemann. I spoke with Burlington Police Chief John Murad earlier today about their efforts to build this case, but I also got a different perspective from someone who spent some time with Jason Eaton last summer. 48-year-old Jason Eaton remains in custody following Saturday night's shooting, and Burlington Police Chief John Murad says he has not been cooperative with the investigation.
I can say that thus far, no. He has availed himself of an attorney.
What we do know about Eaton is that he moved to Burlington over the summer from Syracuse, New York, and legally purchased the gun used in the shooting. But Murad says the suspect doesn't have much of a criminal record, one traffic stop from a number of years ago. Right now, police say they're building a case, including a review of a number of electronics seized from Eaton's apartment. According to the affidavit, that's 5 cell phones, a GoPro camera, tablet, iPad, and a backpack of hard drives.
We're going to be relying on our federal partners to really comb through the electronic evidence that we have accumulated in this case.
But Murad says while the investigation is moving forward, at this point, the pace is more deliberate.
This is a slower part, and I know that that isn't necessarily something that folks want to hear. They want answers now or want to be reassured sooner rather than later about what we think the motive here may be. That's not something that I see forthcoming in any immediate sense.
Investigators are looking into Eaton's past, and we're getting a different perspective. As for Eaton's work history, he was hired by Wilderness Education Program Croca Expeditions as a farm assistant in the summer of 2022. The organization wrote in a statement it ran a full criminal background check on Eaton in June of 2022, which, quote, resulted in no issues of concern. I spoke to a student in the New Hampshire program who says they had multiple conversations with Eaton over the course. They wished to stay anonymous. They told me, quote, I don't remember any time I saw him act in a way that seemed unkind or mean. They went on to say they have only positive memories of Eaton. I asked what they thought of the incident, saying, quote, I hope it's not him. Croca also wrote, Eaton worked with other organizations like the Boy Scouts of America and with several other, quote, well-respected outdoor education organizations.
Eaton was employed by Cuso Financial Services in Williston for less than a year. He was terminated from that position on November 8th of this year. Matt.